Does anyone remember the Eternals? You'd be forgiven if you didn't. Even for a series of movies with lackluster entries, Eternals stands out in not standing out. However, I do feel everybody was too harsh on this movie. This is less of a review and more me trying to rationalize creative choices made. It's hard talking about a movie that you don't have any really strong feelings for. However, I've tried my best to break down why I feel Eternals didn't do well commercially or critically, and why I think it had a lot of potential. The basic premise of the movie is that the Eternals, a group of superheroes, were sent to Earth by M.O.D.O.R.M, a celestial, from a cosmic race of gods, to guide early humanity into becoming an intelligent and prosperous species, and to defend them from the deviants, creatures who hunt sentient life. After hunting all deviants, their leader Ajax tells the group to split up to live life until M.O.D.O.R.M tells them that they can go home. Cut to present day, Cersei plans to regroup with her fellow Eternals after mysterious earthquakes occur around the globe, only to find that their leader was killed by a deviant after believing that they had hunted them all. After Cersei is made the new leader, she is told by M.O.D.O.R.M the true purpose of the Eternals, to raise humanity to an acceptable number, and that resulting energy would birth a celestial, destroying the planet and eradicating humanity. He also revealed that they have been doing this for countless planets, for countless eons. Being that Cersei loves humans the most, she must find and convince the others of a plan to put the celestial back to sleep until they can find a new planet for the humans to live on. Once they gather and put their plan in motion, however, it is revealed that Icarus, the strongest Eternal and Cersei's former lover, also knew of M.O.D.O.R.M's plan and killed Ajax to keep the Celestial's goals in motion. They fight, but the Eternals are successful and kill the Celestial rather than put it to sleep. Icarus flies into the sun out of guilt. The film ends with M.O.D.O.R.M taking some of the Eternals to space to judge the Earth with their memories. Cersei is the main character, and a generic one, but I don't mean that in a negative way. She's a good person who loves humanity. I actually feel that her not being complex helps the movie a bit, seeing as how there are 10 Eternals in the film. She serves the film fine, and the performance from Genma Chan elevates what would otherwise be a very flat character. A modern talking point I see in movie discussion these days is that characters, especially villains, should be complex. I think the character should service the role and type of movie they are in. Darth Vader, arguably one of the most iconic villains in film, is really just a generic evil guy until the sequels and prequels flesh him out. It'd be better if she were more interesting, but Cersei works well enough for the role she plays. For the next few characters, I'm going to be brief because I don't have much to say, which is an issue because there are so many characters. Makkari is the speedster of the group, and she has basically no character aside from a slight fling with Druig. Her action scenes are cool, and she has some of the best speedster power displays in film, but aside from that, I have nothing else I could write about this character. I don't even have enough to say anything negative. Speaking of Makkari, her apparent love interest, Druig. He has a semi-interesting presence in that he's the first to question their mission, and that believes that humanity is evil, but it doesn't really go further than that. He can mind-control humans, and whenever they split up in the past, he takes a group of people into the woods and lives with them and protects them for 19 generations. He states in the film that at times he wanted to mind control humanity to prevent them from hurting each other, but didn't because their flaws are what make them human. I think they could have made Druig a much more interesting character had they leaned him towards a disdain towards humanity, since he would be the only Eternal that would seemingly feel that way. Maybe he could slowly see the good in people, or maybe he's pushed further into his ideology through the events of the film. It doesn't matter either way because the movie does not develop him further. Gilgamesh is the strongest Eternal, but also not because Icarus exists. He loves Thena? Or maybe they're just good friends. I was never too sure about them. He protects her after she starts developing a mind disease, and then he dies in the movie. I really have nothing else to say. I was very disappointed by this because I loved M.O.D.O.R.M. Oh my god, I butchered his name. In Train to Busan, and I feel that he was wasted in the film. She was the leader of the Eternals that was betrayed by Icarus because she didn't want to destroy the Earth after seeing humanity's good side. She's similar to Cersei, which one could chalk up to lazy writing, but it's actually kind of clever, if only by accident. Ajax notices that Cersei loves humanity from the beginning more than the other Eternals did, and once Ajax lives amongst humanity, she sees the value of their lives, and this explains why she chose Cersei to lead the Eternals after she passes away. Aside from that, she doesn't have enough screen time to do anything else. Athena is the best warrior and develops Mad Weary disease, which is revealed to happen because of the mind reset the Eternals go through after a planet is destroyed. She kills the deviant guy after he killed Gilgamesh, who was her friend. That's it. Kingo serves as the comic relief, and his performance is probably one of the only fond memories of the film. It's cheating in a way because it's easy to be favored as the comic relief in a boring movie, but nonetheless, I think Kumail did great work with this role, and I'm excited to see him as Booster Gold. Sprite is an Eternal that has the form of a child, and since the Eternals do not age, she looks young forever. Throughout the movie, she is upset that she cannot become an adult, primarily because she sees all the things humans have and she cannot. She can't be loved or grow old, and is jealous of those who can. She is in love with Icarus and betrays the other Eternals to join him, and has a weirdly funny moment that I don't think was meant to be funny. She eventually gets her wish and becomes human. I've gotten past all the characters I don't think had much development in the film, which is kind of crazy because it's most of the cast. I won't go so far as to say Fastos was a good character, but I think he had the most potential, and if he were given the time to develop, could have been the highlight of the film. He's the team's inventor, and he's supposed to guide humanity's technological progress in the film. In the scene where they are about to find him in the present day, it cuts to the past, where he blames himself for the atomic bombs dropped on Japan, saying that humanity doesn't deserve to be saved. It's a pretty powerful moment. Cut to today, where he has a husband and child and doesn't feel the same way anymore. He says his family has shown him the good in humanity, but still won't use his powers to help humanity. I think this could have been a great character arc, but it happens in literally less than 10 minutes, and then Fastos never develops further. I want to blame the pacing, however I don't think any pace a film could have would fix the fact that they're trying to introduce 11 characters, new concepts, and an origin story all in the same film. I've seen the opinion that this movie would have benefited a lot from being a TV show rather than a movie, and I agree. It would have been nice seeing Fastos overseas and struggle with the guilt, and then finding the good that humanity is also capable of with technology. Fastos could have been a great character, but he isn't. There are almost traces of what I think was supposed to be an arc over the movie, but I can't base my opinion on that. There's so much of this movie I'm conflicted on, because I can almost see the vision, and it's hard to separate what could have been and what is. Icarus is my favorite character. I think Icarus is a good character. It's hard to say great, I think, because I might be overrating him, because he does not have any competition in the movie. From the beginning, he doesn't do much aside from the fighting and being hesitant towards their plan to put the Celestial to sleep. It isn't until the latter half of the film that his character development picks up. It's revealed in a flashback that Ajax had spoken with Icarus before the Deviant attack in London, and that Ajax had a change of heart. Icarus, once hearing this, decides to kill her, and tricks Ajax by saying he'd like to show her something, revealing that some Deviants had survived after all these years. He then pushes her into the pit of Deviants, killing her. He brings her corpse back to her house, where he cries out in anguish. In the first viewing, it was kind of funny, because he cries out, but I still think this is one of the best scenes in the movie. Richard Madden did a great job playing Icarus, and it's unfortunate his performance never really gets brought up. He then goes to see Cersei and Sprite in London, where the movie had started. His character really shines whenever he's about to stop Cersei when she's turning the Celestial to stone, but can't bring himself to. Out of guilt for everything he's done, he flies into the sun. He has lots of scenes showing great remorse for his actions, however he is too faithful to the Celestials, and does what he believes is correct. He is heartbroken having to do this to what is basically his family, especially when killing Ajax, saying the path that he is on is the only one that he has ever known. That being said, this would all be a lot more powerful had we seen Icarus's relationship with the Eternals other than Cersei. They all regard him as the strongest and have seemingly a lot of respect for him, but we don't know anything further than that. Sprite is in love with him, but we don't know anything about their relationship prior or what led to it, and we don't even see the two discuss it. Kingo says he'll follow Icarus like he always has, but we don't know anything else about the two. At the final battle, Fastos says he's always wanted to clip his wings, but we've never seen any indication that Phastos had any negative feelings towards Icarus before this point. I think there is a lot to enjoy about Icarus in the film, but ultimately it's negated by the fact that we cannot understand how much this betrayal hurts the other Eternals. There was not enough time beforehand to establish relationships between them all. I'm having trouble recalling if certain Eternals even spoke to each other. The betrayal of Icarus could have been one of the most heartbreaking moments in the MCU had it been properly built up to. I'm so excited to talk about Deviant Guy because I get to actively be negative about something rather than just passive. I don't think the film ever actively gives him a name, and I refuse to learn it. Deviants are revealed to be the Celestials' previous attempt at hunting creatures who hunt sentient life, but went wrong, so they had to create the Eternals to hunt the Deviants. The film treats this like a shocking reveal, but it really has no impact on anything, and they could have told us this from the beginning. Moving on, Deviant Guy, Trademark Incorporated, started as a normal deviant until it killed Ajax, absorbing her power and seemingly gained sentience. It's never explained why it knew it could steal Ajax's power, as before killing Gilgamesh and developing speech and seemingly becoming fully sentient, it only seemed to eat people. It doesn't really become a character until after killing Gilgamesh and begins speaking. Deviant Guy, Trademark Incorporated, reveals that after killing Ajax, it has her memories, and it says that it will hunt down the Eternals because they are murderers to its kind. It then disappears until the end of the film, has a fight scene with Thena, and then it dies. That's it. I cannot for the life of me understand what the thought process was for this character. You could remove this character's dialogue from the movie and it would make no difference. This is probably one of the worst MCU villains, if not just the worst. You could argue Icarus or M.O.D.O.R.M were the main villains, but then what would be the point of his addition to the film? It makes me wonder if there was a point in the film's history where he had a larger role or didn't exist. Which leads me to my next point. Throughout the movie, there is a lack of a clear antagonist. The audience is not aware of Icarus's intentions until late into the film, and M.O.D.O.R.M only appears like 3 times, so he's forgotten while watching. You could point to Deviant Guy as the clear villain of the movie, but he only actively spoke to and interacted with Thena, and then he died. He never even said his name. General audiences are used to a definitive villain that has a good introduction scene that establishes the type of character they are. In this movie, you have 3 sort of villains that either aren't present throughout the film, or aren't villains until the final act. The movie does not fill the void that an antagonist usually would with anything, so at large points in the film, everything just feels aimless and you forget what the point of the movie is. An aspect I don't see many people talk about for Marvel movies is the hype before release. It's unfair for a lot of characters, but usually the movies that do the best are the ones with already popular characters from the comics. You have characters everybody already knew about before their movie, like Hulk and Spider-Man, and you have characters that are lesser known to the general audience, but comic fans are excited for, like Moon Knight and Kang. The most recent example is probably Red Hulk in the upcoming Captain America movie. He's probably the reason most people are going to go see that. The only characters I can think of that weren't well known by comic fans beforehand and were still wildly successful were the Guardians of the Galaxy. But those movies did well based on word of mouth and taking place at what I would consider the height of excitement around the MCU. Eternals had neither. I'm not too familiar with comic fans' general feelings towards Eternals pre-release, but there was less hype than I think that usually surrounds a new Marvel release. This movie's biggest issue is the pacing. All of this movie's problems come from the awful pacing. This film is a staggering 2 hours and 36 minutes. For reference, Avengers Endgame, the culmination of the first 3 phases of the MCU, was about 3 hours. A long movie is not a bad thing, but it spends the first 40 minutes going from present day to the past, and we don't really move the plot forward until fully returning to the present day. It's hard to explain, but the first act doesn't really exist. The first 40 minutes is spent explaining why the Eternals exist, what they do and why, and I cannot emphasize enough, briefly introducing the characters. The pace picks up after getting all that out of the way, but you really feel the runtime at certain points. It also doesn't help that I feel that the concepts that they introduce weren't complex enough to warrant this amount of time. The film does get better after a rewatch, and my second viewing didn't feel as long as it did the first time, but first impressions make or break movies, and Eternals suffered for it. After what I guess you can call the first act, we are introduced to the actual plot of the movie and are actually meeting the characters for the first time. They are technically all introduced at the beginning, but basically nobody gets any defining traits until around the 40-minute mark when we've caught up on their past. Basically, every single thing wrong with this movie can be traced in some way to the pacing. Now for the reason I made this video. I think it's unfair to lump this movie into the same pile of bad as other bad movies in the MCU. Other Marvel movies are bad because villain motivations or the villains themselves are overly simplistic, characters lack depth, and there's a lack of tension in the plot. Not that this movie doesn't have the same issues, but rather than try and present a straightforward good versus evil narrative like the average MCU movie, Eternals tries to achieve a deeper narrative purpose. Throughout Eternals, recurring themes surrounding death, evolution, and the value of humanity appear. I'm going to sound like I'm reaching a bit, so please stick with me. At the beginning of the film, Cersei is late to class, and on her way in, she greets a statue of Charles Darwin. This establishes two things. One, acknowledging that the Eternals have been subtly surrounding and influencing humanity off-screen, and two, that evolution is a theme in this film. This is a really well-written moment, if a little odd seeing as how she had to greet a statue to achieve this. Seeing as how they are artificial beings, the Eternals cannot evolve, and the Deviants can, as the main Deviant does. Sprite holds some level of resentment towards humans because they age and die, and she cannot. In some way, what the Eternals do is pointless seeing as how they do it forever, while humans eventually reach an end. While the Eternals are immortal, they do technically have a form of death. Whenever Athena develops mad weary disease, she seems afraid, and everyone is hesitant to send her M.O.D.O.R.M to be reset, because then she won't remember who she is. She will continue to live, however, she won't remember any of her experiences, which isn't really any different from death. The Eternals all have countless lives they cannot remember because they are reset every time, so they've all technically died countless times. Over the course of the movie, humanity is shown to be evil and good. They show the atomic bombs and the genocide of native people. The movie is trying to say something about the equally infinite malice and good humans have. Phastos' character is the most obvious example of this, in that he loses all hope in humanity, but eventually disagrees with this viewpoint because of the apparently equal good he sees in his family. It is unfortunate that we only ever really see Phastos' perspective on the matter, because I think it could have been very interesting seeing every other Eternal's perspective on the matter in depth. Even though Icarus wants to fulfill M.O.D.O.R.M's plans, he doesn't seem to hold any hostility towards humanity. Druig seems to hold the most resentment towards humans, often mind controlling them, thinking there's no other way for them to be good. It's disappointing his relationship with humanity never seems to be brought up again after a throwaway line after Gilgamesh dies, saying he acknowledges that without free will, humans wouldn't be human. Druig could have potentially had an interesting relationship with Kingo's assistant Patel. Whenever they first meet, Druig says that humanity will be its own downfall and that they are doomed. And in response, Patel says that people should learn from their mistakes and move forward. Patel also has one of the more emotional moments in the film, when thinking Earth was doomed, thanked the Eternals for everything they had done for humanity and leaves. This all isn't to convince you that Eternals is a secret masterpiece, but it's more than people chalk it up as. It wants to say something about humanity, death, and evolution. However, all my points in this section are just surface level ideas that the movie touches upon and never goes further with. It just didn't get enough time. I can see where a genuinely amazing movie about the Eternals' relationship with humanity is developed, the Eternals' characters are explored, and it really could have been the larger-than-Earth, cosmic space opera story, and yet human and emotional story it was marketed to be. Now it's time for nitpicks. Things that bothered me but weren't enough to disturb my viewing of the film. A big point for me is the costumes. They're void of color and very boring, which is odd considering the source material being Jack Kirby's designs, which are far out and full of color. I suppose the tone of the movie would not match comic accurate costumes, however some point in the middle must have been possible. For whatever reason, the MCU only ever respects Spider-Man costumes enough to make them close to the comics. Speaking of design choices, the villains. The Deviants are generic alien-looking monsters who don't talk and have no goals other than being generic monsters that hunt humans. They are terrible antagonists. A plot point many questioned even before the film released was if the Eternals had been on Earth and helping humanity. Why didn't they help prevent the snap or help with the aftermath? It's explained that M.O.D.O.R.M ordered them not to interfere in humanity outside of deviant activity, but once you learn the Celestials' true goals, this no longer makes sense. Thanos erases half of all life in the universe, and Celestials need sentient life to be born. An event on that scale would delay countless celestial births. It would also be a cool way to retroactively explain Thanos' need to eliminate life, rather than create resources. This was outside the film's control, but I really wanted to see more Black Knight content. I'm not a fan of the comics, but more mystic stuff in Marvel is always fun to me. I wish Marvel would explore its horror and magic side of comics more often, and due to the performance of the Eternals, I wonder if we'll ever see the Black Knight project, whatever it was planned to be. It's revealed that the Eternals were created, but if that's the case, why don't they all just have Icarus powers? Why not make a team of like 6 Eternals with Icarus powers, 2 with Ajax, and the rest split between Sprite and Fastos to influence humanity? Don't they know how to roll Q? Haven't they ever played Overwatch? I also think we should have seen a difference in character for the Eternals after we find them again in the present day. How they have influenced humanity, and how humanity has influenced them, and how that reflects what kind of person they become. Maybe we see that Icarus never wore human clothes and secluded himself from humanity to set the seeds early that he feels no love towards humanity and only cares for the mission. Perhaps Kingo is a more serious character in the past, and whenever we catch up with him, he's become vain and arrogant after being around humans. Thus he understands aspects of them that seemed foreign at first, creating more sympathy for them from the Eternals' perspective. It would also help establish the passage of time better, rather than little mini titles on the side just telling us what era we are in, which was dumb and lazy. This video was not meant to change anyone's opinion on the movie. I can't say I enjoyed the movie myself, but I do think its failure with audiences and the box office is sad. The Eternals tried to do something outside of the Marvel formula, and it really felt like someone cared about the story they were trying to tell. If this had done well financially, this might have led to more creator-driven projects, rather than the conveyor belt movies it feels like Marvel has been pumping out lately. I think I would go see Eternals 2. It wouldn't be weighed down by spending a majority of its runtime with character introductions and exposition, but who knows when and if we'll see the Eternals again. Until next time, I leave you with these images of Eternals Marvel Legends figures that will remain at your local Ollie's eternally.